From getting hit on the nose so many times that they got scared it may never heal, to getting too exhausted to continue.
Far enough away from danger as he starts teeing off.
Grandal looks hurt. Grandal looks hurt. This could be the end.
Big left.
This could be an early stoppage. Another first round for McGregor. This could be it!
That is it! It is all over, and Conor McGregor!
The MMA community's filled with fighters who haven't made it to the end. And to start off, I have Cynthia Calvillo. Cynthia stunned many back in December 2019 when she left the fight midway. The matchup between Calvillo and Marina Rodriguez was taking place in Las Vegas and had started on a good note. Both fighters were neck and neck, exchanging punches and jabs. But the fight seemed to take a wrong turn in the first round, when both the fighters got into a tangle and Calvillo accidentally hit Rodriguez's nose. Rodriguez's nose began to bleed profusely, prompting the referee to call an end to the round. The referee gave Rodriguez a few minutes of rest and recovery, after which she chose to continue with the fight. But as soon as the fight resumed, Calvillo made the shocking decision to leave the fight midway. It turns out Cynthia had experienced a knee injury a few days before the fight, and the strain of the match had taken a toll on it. She was concerned that sustaining the injury would only make it worse in the longer run, and so she decided it would be better to exit the fight rather than risk long-term damage. Calvillo announced that she was leaving the fight so that she could take care of her injury, but she indicated that she was open to taking on Rodriguez in a future fight when she was completely healed. The UFC community was surprised by Cynthia's decision, but also applauded her responsible move to care for her long-term health. But there are some who don't care about long-term health. Just look at Raquel Pennington's corner. Raquel made news for deciding to end her fight with Amanda Nunes at UFC 224 midway through. It was a rather unexpected outcome for the match, which left fans in shock. In the fourth round, Pennington had nothing left to offer, and she made the wise decision to call off the fight. She implored her coaches to end the fight after being severely beaten by the Brazilian champion. She sat on her stool and told her corner to call off the fight as she was exhausted and her spirit was better. But to everyone's surprise and disgust, her corner refused to call it off and told her she might reconsider if the fight continued. Then in the fifth round, what she had anticipated had sadly come true. Within 2 minutes, the fighter had embraced the canvas in a TKO from Nunes's end, putting an end to the fight which should have stopped long ago.
The finish is going to come here, or so it would appear. Let's stop this thing here. Pennington covering up. Amanda Nunes gets the... Amanda Nunes has 3 times.
It was an unfortunate end to what was set to be an amazing fight between two of the best fighters in women's MMA. In the fourth round, Raquel had nothing left to offer, and she knew the smart decision was to call off the fight. Many fans couldn't understand why Pennington called it quits, but they saw sense in her decision after Raquel was getting severely beaten and didn't see the point in continuing. After the fight, she made it clear that she has no regrets about calling the end of the match.
Declaring the winner by TKO and still the undisputed UFC bantamweight champion of the world, Amanda!
In the end, Pennington had done herself proud by putting up a good fight in the ring and making the decision to call off the match when she did. And the next fighter on the list had the same thing happen to him. He's Jared Hammond, the middleweight who's dubbed the nickname The Messenger, took on Michael Kiper at UFC 150. It was fair to say that the fighter's back was against the wall because he didn't look great in his UFC appearances. But regrettably, Hammond's start to the battle could have been worse for his career and his health. In the first round, his opponent went off to hit Hammond again and again with blows he could barely block. After taking a rather intensive beating, the fighter took a particularly nasty leg kick that caused his knee to buckle. It was soon obvious that the Messenger was having trouble standing. It appeared that the battle might be over when he informed his corner that he had ripped his hamstring in the interval between rounds. He told them that he simply couldn't go on and asked them to end the fight. Amazingly though, Hammond's corner pleaded with their fighter for one more round rather than surrendering. Despite his excruciating pain, surprisingly, Hammond complied, and in the second round, what the fighter had been trying to avoid came true. He received a brutal hammering from Kiper before it resulted in a TKO. And something like this happened yet again to our next fighter. But Max Roskopf simply didn't budge in UFC on ESPN 11. As the rounds went on, it became apparent that Max was either outmatched or underprepared, or maybe even both. All onlookers could see that by the end of the second round, that Roskopf had nothing left to offer. The lightweight repeatedly urged his corner to end the fight.
All right, we got this, champ. Call it.
Listen.
Call it.
Huh?
Call it.
You're gonna beat this guy, Max. We got this. You can beat this guy. Listen, no, listen.
Rob, call it.
No, we got this, Max. Okay? Stop it. We got this.
His explanation at the time was that he simply lacked the motivation to continue. So as he made his way back to his corner, his coaches, on the other hand, urged Roskopf to continue despite his objections. But when the UFC rookie refused to leave his stool, referee Mark Smith requested a timeout to evaluate the fighter's condition, and the timeout was granted. Max was asked whether he wanted to continue the battle, and when he declined, the bloodshed was stopped. The MMA community was in an uproar following the fight, and even the NAC declared its plan to look into Roskopf's corner's actions.
That he wanted him to call the fight. Robert did his best to try to encourage his athlete to stay in things, but Max just didn't want to be here anymore, I guess.
You know, if he knows that he's done, he's spent, he's got nothing else to offer.
And something quite the opposite to this situation happened to the next fighter I'm going to talk about. He's none other than Chris Leben. Leben's a former mixed martial artist who competed in the UFC's middleweight division. He was known for his aggressive fighting style and a willingness to take on any fight, no matter the odds. In December 2013, Leben, who had trained for over a year for the bout, made his return at UFC 168 against Uriah Hall. He showed his toughness and resilience in the fight. The fights were going as usual, as Leben was putting on a show with his unpredictable striking. But it all changed when Leben received a brutal head kick, which dropped him to the mat. In an instant, Leben knew that he had to leave the fight, and his corner agreed. He was seen wrestling the referee to avoid the pin, and then surrendered himself by raising his hands in defeat. This decision was taken as a result of a deep desire to protect himself from any more harm.
Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
Oh, I'm done, man.
Deep breath. Focus.
No, stop it.
Okay. I'm done. Take a deep breath. Okay.
Experiencing many injuries caused by his style of fighting, Leben knew his body can no longer take such a beating. He was also aware that his career would be further hampered if he suffered any more injuries. The decision hasn't been easy for Leben, as he loved to fight and was a fan favorite for many people. And the same decision was just as hard, if not harder, for another fighter. He's the man himself, BJ Penn. His UFC 94 fight with Georges St-Pierre was among the most intense showdowns in recent MMA history. But unfortunately, the fight didn't end quite like Penn would have liked. After 4 grueling rounds, Penn seemed to be on the losing end. And around the midpoint of round 5, despite pre-fight comments of fighting to the death, the fighter signaled to his brother that he wanted to quit. He'd been on the receiving end of some vicious, technical punches from GSP and was visibly bruised and battered. With the time for the decision drawing close and a clear loser emerging, the Hawaiian realized that he had no chance of winning and called it quits. Well, that's all for the most unexplainable moments where MMA fighters quit mid-fight.